Hello, welcome to In the Kitchen with Laura. Now before I get started with the regular part of the episode, I just want to tell you a couple things. I am going to be using a real wood-burning cook stove in this episode. Now I do not own one myself, so I got a chance to use somebody else's. Now I thought I was going to have plenty of time to shoot multiple takes and make sure I had everything I wanted. It did not work out that way. So if you're finding a couple things that seem a little rough, that's probably why. Also, I was in a building that had a furnace in it. Now, if I'd been by myself or myself and a cameraman, I would have shut off the furnace and just gone on without it, because you really don't need it. If you've got a wood cook stove going and it isn't very cold outside, you don't really need the furnace. But anyway, it was there, it was on, so you're going to hear it periodically. I would also like to thank Carol Ann from Facebook, who recorded some wood burning for me so I could slip that in a couple places where you couldn't hear it because of the furnace. I also want to give out a safety tip, because in this video I am poking around a little bit with the stove lid lifter in the actual fire. Now I want to be very plain. This is part of what I would have probably redone if I had had time. If you are not used to wood stoves, you don't really want to be doing that. I should be plain that while I had a fire started, the reason I was poking it, it was a very small fire. And honestly, I do not get it. You take fire and you feed it its very favorite foods, and it sits there and hardly does anything. And yet, how do house fires start? I just don't get it. But anyway, I was just getting the fire started, so I was poking it to move the wood around and stuff. Normally, I would have used a poker or one of the ash things, which I'm actually going to show later in the episode. But I was in a hurry. I didn't see the ash thing, which is what I normally prefer to use, and the poker was in use a different place. So I had my stove lid lifter and the fire was really low. Now I will cut in a couple times to the fire when it's really going well. I would not be poking the fire then with the stove lid lifter. So just to being very clear, I have messed around with fire for a long time, and even though it is not friends with me, I have a good idea of when it's safe or not. If you actually would be starting this as your first time using a wood stove, don't do that. And in general, people don't understand just how hot things get on the stove. There are lots of times on TV shows when people are picking things up and we're going, there was really a fire in that stove. You could not be doing that. So I'm also putting my hand on various things that if the fire had been burning longer, I couldn't. So as a safety thing, do as I say, not as I actually do in this video, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks, and on with the show. Hello, and welcome to today's In the Kitchen with Laura. Now you can see I'm in a different kitchen today. I wanted to take some time and talk to you a little bit about a wood cook stove, and since today I have an actual wood cook stove, I thought this would be the best time. A wood stove is all about controlling fire. So we have a fire in this first section right here. Now you're going to start a fire in the box. Now I've already gone ahead and done that today because I happen to usually have bad luck when I'm trying to do it to show somebody. But we're going to just take a piece of wood and put it in here. Now, we could put in the wood through this thing in front. That's what it's actually for. But I like to drop it down the top. You can get a better idea of how your fire is going and right where you need the wood and if you have to move anything to get it going like you want. What I normally would be using to poke around in the fire is this ash tool, and right this moment, editing the video, I just spotted it when I couldn't find it anywhere the day of. And the heat for the whole stove and the oven is going to come from right here where the fire is. And you can tell that it does have fire going. And it's a little different than cooking in your stove because you have to adjust the heat differently. The firebox is just this part of the stove here, so all the heat's going to come from that one side. And you can adjust the burners like on your stove, but you have to do it a little bit more carefully. First, you could have the fire more to one side or the other, but usually, you keep a fairly even fire. Goes in there. Oh, this is a wood stove lid lifter. You can see each removable piece has a cavity with a broken bar. The tool slips in under the bar and catches, so you can lift. Find out more about wood stove parts at this link. And then you'll see there's two circles. Now the next hottest thing would be as if you had something, and my pan here today is not the right size. But they make a lot of pans that are just this size, so you can set them down right over the fire. Notice the lip just inside the ring? Both the lid itself and anything just that size sits and rests on the lip. And then on top, now that's going to be the hottest kind of being the equivalent of being turned to high on the knob in your stove at home. And then as you move over to the right, it's going to get cooler and cooler until over on this little ledge it's going to be the coolest. Now that is important because sometimes you want a lot of heat under something, and sometimes you just want it simmering away, like I had a pot of water in the stove here, and it can sit there for a long while, and it'll take it a while to heat up. Now there is also an oven right here. Now again, the fire is just on this side, so you have to really watch things you're baking and turn it to even it out, because the heat, again, all from one side. You might have to turn things in your oven at home, but really, for the most part, it's supposed to be fairly even. Not so with a wood stove. You can see it's a small oven, but it's a great thing to work in. I have done cooking on this very stove, including with my grandmother for Christmas one year. Now, on top here is a warming oven. Now, you can have just a shelf here, but I personally love the warming ovens. I'm going to open that up. Now, this is going to be keeping things kind of warm all the time, and you will hear people talk about having bread and keeping it in here. Now, that's going to keep it fairly dried out, but it's also going to keep it very warm, and people love to do that, to be able to have things warming up in the warming oven. I personally love it to death, and that is the basic parts of how you make a wood stove work. Thank you for joining me today on In the Kitchen with Laura, and I hope that we'll be seeing you again. Remember, right in the corner where you are.